Welcome to the BS Report. Unfortunately, we do not have the ISDN line today because I am not at my house. Too bad. I am on a regular phone talking to Dan Le Batard, who is also on a regular phone. But we're going to record this anyway because we have to. And now Dan Le Batard, who is on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline, I think is the king of all sports media. Congratulations, Dan.
I didn't do anything. I was just sitting here living in a wonderful city. I guess I'll take your congratulations, but I didn't do anything.
What kind of book deal did you sign? Was it like a $5 million book deal, $4 million? What kind of money did you get?
Have you not noticed that I don't write much anymore? It's really hard. Writing is really hard. Gas backing on these things, it's really easy, and I laugh more. So I'd rather just observe this and enjoy it as a fan than have to actually suffer it alone in front of some computer doing what you did and writing 700 pages. That doesn't seem like a lot of fun to me.
Everybody has attacked this the show last night from the angle of LeBron's legacy and what it did to Cleveland and the fans and how callous it was. And I want to get into that a little bit later, but approach it from the side of Miami, who has basically now become the center of the basketball universe.
Is there any right way to do what he did last night? I mean, Miami's the only city that's going to end up being happy about this. I think he made an amazing trade in an hour last night, and I don't think we've ever seen anything like it in sports. He traded being beloved for being hated for the moment. Maybe it'll change if he wins a bunch, to come down here. And there's only one city in the United States that's happy about it, and I don't think even that city, blinded by fan loyalty, I don't think even that city would look at last night's spectacle and say, yeah, that was the right way to do that. That seems like a good idea. So, I mean, obviously there's a great deal of enthusiasm here. It's celebrity, it's big, it's glitz, and Miami doesn't do sports great, doesn't do sports fandom very well at all. But those things we do great. You give us glitz, celebrity, packaging, buzz, and we will flood your power plant.
Did you like LeBron more or less after last night?
I think pretty much everybody who watched that had a change of opinion on him. I don't think there are a lot of consensus in sports, but I think a lot of people have that feeling like, ooh, this doesn't feel good. But of course, I'm happy. Selfish. All fans are selfish. Like I remember going through this with Ricky Williams when he retired, just having these long conversations about how fans wanted him to give up his happiness for them and then called him selfish when he decided to go do his own thing. So selfishly, I'm happy because it makes Miami matter. And I assume Miami would look at this and be thrilled just because, good God, this guy won 66 games last year by himself. Now his third best player on his team is Chris Bosh. Like, who knows what this insanity is going to end up producing. But, of course, you look at it and feel bad as well for the people of Cleveland. I had a friend of mine write something that said he feels like the cool guy who just slept with the really, really hot wife of the pale, tubby, nice guy in accounting.
I've heard a lot of different analogies because I'm running a mailbag today of just emails I got from mostly Cleveland fans, and that seems to be the recurring thing. Like I feel like somebody who kind of overachieved with my girlfriend or boyfriend, and then I kind of always knew maybe they'd leave, but now they just kicked me in the teeth, and they did it on the Jumbotron, at the Super Bowl, like in the worst possible way. And my opinion didn't change of him last night because my opinion was already formed by the fact that he did that show in the first place. I just think after the second round exit against the Celtics, I don't see how you can do that. If you're going to leave, fine. It's a free country. I understand his reasons. He wanted to play with his friends. He wanted some help. He wanted to live in South Beach. Maybe Cleveland was too small for him. I get all of it. Just release a statement and say you're leaving, or just do a quick interview on SportsCenter and get it done. But to turn it into a spectacle and to leave Cleveland hanging like that, and then also I think the Cleveland fans were watching that going, our only chance is that there's no way this guy could be this mean-spirited to do this on national TV to us during a 1 hour live special. And they're actually holding on to that hope. And then he did it anyway, and I just thought it was mean.
I don't think it was mean-spirited. I think it was an utter lack of awareness. I mean, you give child stars fame, and Drew Barrymore ends up in cocaine rehab at 11 years old. I mean, I live in Miami. LeBron's start next year when he throws that stuff in the air might as well be cocaine. And I don't know how to get cocaine right now, if you ask me. And Drew Barrymore was in cocaine rehab at 11 or 12 years old. So he's come up through the system of ass-kissing all his life. And I have to wonder, as he sat there yesterday, if he was aware of what he was doing to others. Like, that's the classic definition of narcissism. I mean, you live in this bubble of fame and coddling, and everyone is feeding you and your ego, and you do something that everyone is scratching their head about, saying, why would you do this way to Cleveland? I just think I think it's a fundamental lack of awareness. Or going another way on it, Bill. Let me. If he was aware that this is what he was going to do to Cleveland and the country, and that he was going to go from beloved to hated immediately, and he was really aware and doing that in the name of team, in the name of sacrifice, in the name of winning, then holy, that's brave what he did. But there's got to be the awareness there in order for that to be brave. If there's not the awareness there, then you just seem kind of dumb.
Well, that's a possibility. And we also know that he doesn't really have anybody in his life who is an older, wiser person. I thought it was World Wide West, but it really seems like World Wide West got pushed out as this went along. Nobody in his life to say to him, hey, look, don't do it this way. This is not a good way to do it, and all you're doing is risking everything you've just built over the last 7 years and all the credibility you've built with fans and the likability you've built with them. And, you know, I'm trying to look at it from his perspective, and I really think that he thought all along, I'm going to Miami. I think this was done in June, in May. I don't know, but I think this was done well before this week. And I think his feeling was, well, if I give money to charity, it'll be fine. I really think he felt that way. Oh, we'll give money to the Boys and Girls Club, and people will concentrate on that and not the fact that I just stabbed Cleveland in the back, basically. And if he really thought that, really misguided, like almost amazingly, astoundingly misguided. It goes back to the narcissism thing and the fact that he referred to himself in the third person, 5 times? Yeah.
If you think the older influence is what he needed and he doesn't have an older influence to guide him, I've always liked part of the fact that around these three guys, I like that the players finally had the power, because in sports so often fans just side with management because management tends to take care of fans or the things that fans want to take care of, and what players do is hold out. And there are a lot of injustices among athletes because of that, and nobody cares because athletes make so much money that injustices are lost when you're talking about millionaires. But I loved the fact that the players had the power and hijacked the sport. The employees had the power. You rarely see that, and that's got good and bad. The bad is what you just witnessed. When the players have the power, you witness a spectacle like that last night. Now the good, which is coming, is Pat Riley's not going to run this team, Bill. These guys are going to run this team. They're going to show you that they don't need some dictator authoritarian in 3-hour practices. They don't need the help of some Phil Jackson Zen figure to lead them through his discipline and harness their talents. They're going to do it themselves. That's the core part of having the players in power, because nobody's going to say Spoelstra did this. But the flip side is what you saw last night, which was just a messy orgy.
It's really hard for me to believe that he grew up in Ohio and he didn't understand what that special was going to do to the people that live there. And look,
he didn't grow up like them, though, Bill. He didn't grow up anything like everyone in that city.
Yeah, but he still lived there. I mean, how can you live there and not understand the level of pain that they've had over the last 56 years or however long, 46 years, and all the different terrible sporting events that that they refer to in one word and 2 words, like the shot, the drive.
But he's a Yankee fan and a Cowboy fan and a hip-hop fan, like a fan of of winning. Like he's not a fan of Cleveland.
But
like
he still lives there though. Like if you live there just by osmosis, you should at least understand a little bit the psyche of the fan base that you're playing for. How does he not understand that? That's the part I don't get. And you know, my biggest disappointment with how ESPN covered the show last night, and we could talk about that for 10 hours and probably none of it would end up running. But just that nobody really banged that point home. Like, you know, what about the fans? Why did you choose to do this in a 1 hour special? Did you really put a lot of thought into how this would fly back in Cleveland? Like when Wilbon asked him about how do you expect to be treated in Cleveland, it was like LeBron really had no idea. It was like, oh, yeah, I think they'll, it's like he didn't get it, which is the weirdest part of this whole thing to me. Don't you agree?
Well, I mean, I think we're assigning traits to him because he's big and muscled and famous and has been in our consciousness for a long time that may not be there. I mean, he's allowed to be a scared 25-year-old kid, isn't he? Or is he not allowed? Is he not, because he's a prodigy, he's not allowed that? I mean, that was a big moment. It seemed to me in watching that there was nobody in that room who wasn't scared. Maybe John Barry. Like, it seemed to me that everyone was nervous. And everyone, and people a lot older than him, and people who weren't the center of attention like him.
Well, and then you go back to, all right, maybe this guy is just not that smart and not that worldly and just doesn't get it. And now if you're looking at it from just the most basic terms and assuming that this guy isn't smart and maybe he's thinking like a 12-year-old kid or whatever, then it starts to make sense. And you think, here's a situation where he really likes Wade and Bosch. Those are his buddies. He played with them in China. It was obviously that whole Olympics and the build up to it and being on that team and being on a winning team and not having to carry the load every night. All of that he apparently loved, and he wanted to recreate it, and he had a chance to live in South Beach and to hang out with these two guys who were as rich as him, who understood the things that he was going through. And that's just what he wanted to do. And he was like, screw it, I'm doing this. I mean, could it have been that simple?
Well, I always flinch. You can do dumb things without being dumb, and I always flinch when somebody points to an athlete and says maybe he's not that smart, because any successful person I know tends to be pretty lopsided. They're smart about a certain thing, and then they're not really balanced. They carve a singular skill and sculpt it to the lopsided detriment of other things in their life. So LeBron is a genius about what he does and can be smart about some things and not have been smart about this beyond saying, man, it would be cool to run the sport with my friends. And that part of it is smart. That part of it is smart. Like he chose winning above all else. He chose.
Well, no, but hold on though. See, I disagree with that, because if he had chose winning, he would have gone to Chicago. This was not winning. This was, I have two awesome teammates and nothing else, and we're going to have to do way too much this first year unless we can talk five guys into playing for the minimum salary who might be able to help us. I don't feel like he exhibited any true sense of what it takes to win, because you don't win this way. And by the way, defense wins championships. How is this team going to get a defensive stop?
Bill, you did this. If this was the Celtics, your argument would be on the other side of this, because your Celtics did this, and they didn't have any role players. And I was sitting there asking myself, how do you pronounce the first name of that Rondo guy? And they're going to get 8, 7 serviceable veterans or people you've never even heard of, and some of them are going to look like Rondo by virtue of playing with them.
I totally disagree with that, because it became, I mean, we have the hindsight of knowing now, but Rondo was a real gem. And I actually watched the team that year, and I thought he was going to surprise people. And I knew Perkins was a starting center, and they really only needed 3 more bench guys. And it seemed realistic to me during that summer that they could talk people into taking less money for 1 year to showcase themselves. The difference this year is that there's a lockout next year. And if you've noticed what's been happening with free agency, everybody's grabbing as much money as they can this summer. Nobody wants to showcase themselves for cheap money this season, so they'll get it the next season, because there's not going to be a next season. So I don't know how they're going to get those guys. And maybe you throw in the no state tax, and I don't know, under the table stuff. Maybe you get a couple guys that way. But can you get 5?
do it. What I don't understand about this is you saw the Celtics do it with players who aren't this good, this young, this big, this strong, this fast. All three of the guys the Celtics did it with weren't this good and weren't in their prime. And I remember having these conversations with people who would say, this can't work. It takes time. You can't just put together a team and expect the pieces to fit. Look, the Celtics don't have any money for anybody. They don't have any money. It's a three-man team. You can't do it that way. Yeah, you can in that sport. There are only 5 guys on the court. Yes, you can. And one of them, Damon Jones and Jason Capono, Bill, led the league in three-point shooting when they played with Wade and Shaq. Damon Jones had played for 9 teams in 7 years and led the league in three-point shooting. They could go find Damon Jones. They could get Damon Jones wherever he is right now, have him play in dress clothes, and he'll hit jumpers for him.
Yeah, but Boston we had our whole mid-level exception that year, which enabled them to sign Posey and Eddie House, who would not have been able to get for minimum salaries. And then they lucked out because P.J. Brown got bought out in February and he wanted to play with them. They also had Rondo and Perkins in place. I thought Miami's biggest mistake was trading Beasley last night, basically giving him away from Minnesota because that's somebody they should have been able to turn into one more decent player. But instead they had to trade him because they have to pay these guys more money. And
No, that's not what they're doing. They're trying to get Mike Miller.
Right, to sign him. But But Mike Miller would have to take a lot less money to come there. I know for a fact that he has a $40 million offer from another team, so they're not going to be able to drum up $40 million for him.
No, they've got $30 million, and because they traded Beasley. And now the question becomes: does Mike Miller want to be great here, never being covered by anybody, or take $40 million somewhere else? But a lot of guys are going to be faced with that question. I think somebody's going to answer it yes, and I don't think it has to be somebody as good as Mike Miller.
Do they have a trade exception from that trade?
They offered Mike Miller $30 million in 5 years. That's what they offered him.
But because they're under the cap, or because they were able to trade Beasley and then fit somebody into his salary spot because they didn't get anything back? I think that's actually how it works.
Yes, that's why they traded Beasley for nothing. They wanted to get a shooter.
All right, so that makes a little more sense. I still think they could have flipped Beasley into Shane Battier or Trevor Ariza or somebody like that. And also, I do like Mike Miller, and I think he could potentially be good, but he really hasn't done anything the last 3 years. Name his last 2 teams that he's been on.
But it doesn't matter, Bill. He's going to sit there and shoot open jumpers. He can be Steve Kerr or John Paxson or 100 other guys in the league. I'm confused as to why you think this is such a different example from what it is that happened to Celtics, because you're looking at it through the prism of retrospect. You can tell us now what you thought about Perkins and Rondo. What I'm telling you is I can grab serviceable professionals who are, you can think they suck, but by any definition, they're in the top 1% of the players in the world at basketball. They're professionals. Right. Whoever it is, Chris Quinn, if you want to choose Chris Quinn. And you put them with these guys, and you're going to see somebody become Kendrick Perkins, and you're going to see somebody become Rondo or something close to it, because you got to double team all 3 of these guys.
Right, but here's the problem, though, Le Batard. You're discussing this offensively only. And this is what people are doing with the 3 guys they put together. They're all fantastic offensive players. LeBron, I think it turned into a pretty good defender over the last couple of years. I think Wade is a good defensive player. I don't think he's great. Bosh is not a good defensive player. And the difference between this and what Boston did in 2008 was they got Garnett, who at the time was the best defensive player in the league and one of the best rebounders. And as we know, ultimately defense wins championships, and we see it year after year after year. They're trying to put together a team where offense wins championships. And, they probably have the best chance because no team has ever had, basically 2 of the 3 best offensive players in the league. At the same time, they're still going to have to get defensive stops. And that's the part I'm dubious about because, you look at the team that Boston had. Perkins was a very good defensive player. Rondo was above average. Garnett was the best defensive player in the league. And the reason that they ended up winning the title that year was because of defense more than anything. This team will not be able to play defense.
It's not about the role players, Bill. Dwayne Wade and LeBron James played defense. Dwayne Wade blocked more shots the last couple of seasons than Shaq. Dwayne Wade, in fact, I think set the record.
But who's going to shut down Kobe Bryant? Who is going to shut down Dwight Howard? Who is going to stop Pau Gasol when Pau Gasol is scoring at will and Chris Bosh can't stop him by himself? Those are my questions.
But you're talking about the best team, the defending champion, and you're talking about guys that can't be stopped by anybody. That's fine that you think that Kobe and Artest and Gasol, they're the only team in the league that can match up one-on-one on this team, and maybe they can stop. Kobe can stop Wade, and Artest can stop LeBron, and Gasol can stop. Give problems to Bosh. But
right.
You're talking.
So then it's the role players. So let's say Artest does a reasonable job on LeBron. I think Gasol is better than Bosh, but Bosh has never played a big game in his life. And I think Kobe and Wade might have the advantage now because Kobe's older, but at the very least it's a wash or close to being a wash. So now it comes down to the role players. They don't have anything approaching Odom and Bynum. They don't have anything approaching Derek Fisher and Steve Blake. I just think that anybody who says this team has guaranteed itself the championship, and right now they're the favorite in Vegas, makes no sense to me. Let's see who they sign. I don't think they're going to be able to get 8 good players. I think it's impossible.
Vegas makes no sense to you, making them a 2-1 favorite while the Lakers are a 4-1 favorite?
Yeah, I would. I mean, to me, that's no contest. At this point right now, the Lakers should be the favorite. And if you're going to tell me Orlando is going to be able to get Mike Miller and they're going to be able to get a center and a real point guard and all this stuff, then maybe you could talk me into it. But I keep going back to, remember the 97 Rockets? There's a similar situation. Their guys were a little longer in the tooth, obviously, than the Wade Bosh.
No similar situation, Bill. There's no similar situation.
No, hold on. So Barkley, Hakeem, and I think Drexler was still on that team. But they didn't have enough money to pay the rest of the guys, and they had to play Matt Maloney at point guard. And Stockton destroyed them in the Western Finals, and that's why they lost. And my whole point is I just don't think we can sign over next year's title to these guys. I think down the road, 3 years from now, they're going to be a monster because at that point you'll be able to get, 2 full mid-level guys, and, we might see them win 70 games in 3 years or 72 or whatever. But I think that this year I don't see it.
And that's a debate people, I guess, are going to have today. But they're all in the prime. This isn't Drexler. This isn't, this isn't Barkley at the end. This isn't Gary Payton and Karl Malone joining forces at the end. This isn't even Garnett, Pierce, and Allen, all of whom were the man on their teams and all of whom got to the conference finals and no further, and they learned very late in their careers after a decade of disappointment, they learned, let's share the ball, let's be a team, and we'll put role players around us and get together and we'll win a championship 3 minutes after being together. These 3 guys are better than those 3 guys were at that time, and they play unselfish games, and I don't see a way in which this doesn't work and immediately. But regardless, if it doesn't work the first year, like you said, it's not about just the first year. This isn't about winning one trophy. What Pat Riley did is about winning multiple trophies.
Oh, I think it's going to work. I just don't think they should be the favorite, and I think people are sorely underestimating how hard it's going to be to put a good team around them. And also, what kind of pressure these guys are going to have 82 games a year and what kind of minutes they're going to have to log, and the fact that this team cannot survive an injury to anybody. And then it's before you get into the whole LeBron Wade thing and how that's going to work. I do think this is what, well, you could explain this better than I can. That's Wade's city, right? That's Wade's team. LeBron is now coming in as the outsider. How does that work?
Jeter's city was New York, and A-Rod came in as LeBron, and A-Rod won with Jeter, and it didn't become...
Yeah, it took 6 years, though.
What's that?
It took 6 years. It was pretty rocky, those first couple, no?
Different sport, though. Different sport. It doesn't take that in basketball when there are only 5 players on the court. I mean,
it could be harder in basketball.
Why would it be harder in basketball?
Because you only have 5 guys on the court, and you need one alpha dog to win the title, and these guys are both alpha dogs, and one of these guys is going to have to take a step back and be like, you know what? I'll be your guy. I'll be your Robin. You be Batman, I'll be Robin. You can't just switch. All right, tonight I'm going to be Batman and you be Robin. It doesn't work that way.
Well, you love that alpha dog theory. I'm not.
Look, we have 64 years of evidence. No team has ever won with two perimeter alpha dogs. Now, this is the best chance for it to ever happen, but...
How many times has it been tried, Bill?
How many times has it been tried?
Yeah, I mean, just because we haven't seen it happen doesn't mean it can't happen. We didn't see, we thought we hadn't seen Peyton Manning be clutch in a big game. Then he had the biggest second half in the history of quarterbacks against the Patriots. We hadn't seen, A-Rod be clutch, and then all of a sudden he has, one of the biggest postseasons ever. Just because we haven't seen it happen doesn't mean it can't happen.
Right, but I don't think it's a sure thing either. And I'm going to be very interested to see these two guys who I think have been forced to carry an unnaturally big load by themselves, carrying teammates that weren't that good night after night, being the guy and having to be in that mode all the time. And every game that's close comes down to however they perform in the last 4 minutes. I think it's hard to snap out of that. And I'll be interested to see. If I had to guess, I think LeBron is going to be the one who takes the back seat, because I think Wade and Carmelo, in my opinion, are the two best finishers out of anybody in the league right now. And I think Wade is a better finisher than LeBron. He can get to the rim. He can shoot threes. This has been LeBron's weakness to some degree these last few years. And do you really think LeBron's going to stand there and just watch Dwayne Wade? Is that how this can play out?
I don't know how it's going to play out. I just can't wait to watch however it is that it plays out. I want to ask you something about what you said, because you said this team can't afford an injury, and I want to throw a hypothetical at you, because I think that it's so rich in talent. And if you believe some of the things that you do about alpha dog and about chemistry and about role players, then if one of them gets injured, wouldn't it test your Ewing theory? Because I believe that if Wade gets injured, I think LeBron and Bosh are still the favorite in the East.
No. Wait, why is everybody so anxious to turn Chris Bosh into a superstar? I wrote this yesterday.
LeBron,
very good offensive player.
No, but LeBron won 66 games last year without anyone as good as Chris Bosh.
Yeah, but we've now overrated how bad Cleveland's supporting cast was. Like, he had guys that were winning guys. Like, he had Varejao. He had Mo Williams. He had two centers that are going to be much better. And listen, I'm not a huge Shaq fan or an Ilgauskas fan, but he doesn't have anybody like that on this Cleveland team. He had Jameson for 3 months, who disappeared in the Boston series, but still, that guy has made all-star teams and is a really good basketball player. He had J.J. Hickson, energy guy coming off the bench. He's not going to have anybody like that in Miami. I don't think you could say Bosh is better than all the guys that he played with in Cleveland combined. And I also think, again, back to the defense thing, I still want to know how this team gets stops. That's what I'm most fascinated by, other than the part where if LeBron wanted to, he could probably average a triple-double now, because he could play power forward, he could pass the ball more, and he really could average like a 25-11-11. Don't you think? That's in play, right?
I mean, yeah. I think if these guys, I know people are worried about them sharing the basketball, but they think they can share the basketball. And I know a lot of people are criticizing just about everything about this in 49 other states, and actually 49 and a half states, because I guess probably in Orlando they're doing the same thing.
Right.
But I can't wait to watch the way that this thing is going to play out, because I think all those questions, I think they're going to end up taking a bat to some of the big cathedrals in sports, chemistry and coaching, and you need to be experienced and you need to be tested over time in the playoffs. Like, I think they're going to take a bat to all that stuff by just being more overwhelming than everybody else. But yeah, I think at the beginning you're probably going to have a situation where they're passing to each other for the big shot, right? They're both at the beginning, both of them are going to be saying, no, I want to show how unselfish I am. I want to show how this can work. I don't want to take the final shot. I want to give you the final shot. Please, you take the final shot.
And by the way, you just described how we almost lost the 2008 Olympics to Spain, because that's exactly what happened. You had all these guys. We had so much more talent than they did. And all of a sudden it was a close game. They kept punching back. We were like, oh, all right, go away now, Spain. No, Spain's still there. Spain's still there. It's 10 minutes. We're only up 3. The crowd's going crazy. And we were faced with that exact same situation. Everybody just stood there looking at each other for a couple minutes. And then finally Kobe said, I'm going to take this.
But where was this born? Where was this whole thing born?
Yeah.
That's not how it worked where it was born. It worked with them conquering countries with Dwayne Wade coming off the bench.
And he was probably the best player on that Olympic team, in my opinion. Do you subscribe to the theory that these guys decided 2 years ago that Miami was going to be the place?
I believe
not Miami or New York or wherever, but that they were all playing together.
Yeah, I believe. I don't think that it was decided. I think it's been discussed since those games, and I do believe that the last 10 days have been a charade, like a total farce. That
you and I agree on that one, brother.
I just don't think about this. Look at it this way, Bill. Like, you think Pat Riley clearing out total salary cap room, gutting his entire roster, is just going to scratch his gelled head and wait till July 1st and say to himself, well, let's see what happens here. Let's just see what happens. It's July. I'm going to wait and be quiet. He sends Dwayne Wade out. Dwayne Wade does all his work for him because he can.
The spy theory. I love it.
I mean, well, because Bosch, they share an agent. So anytime, Pat Riley is talking to Wade's agent, he's talking to Bosch's agent. So you don't have to, they're sharing all of this stuff. So then you've got those guys talking, and then you got Dwayne. LeBron isn't returning Amari Stoudemire's phone calls. He's not returning anybody's phone calls, but he's returning Dwayne's phone calls. So, I believe all of this stuff has just been, nobody was torn. Nobody was really, up all night. And I was thinking, in fact, I'd be willing to believe the theory that Dwayne Wade was going to Chicago to play defense against Chicago to slow down their ability to do anything before I believe that this all came together magically. Hundreds of millions of dollars came together magically in a couple of days. Think about what we've witnessed here, Bill. Are you kidding me? Are you joking that Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh went on national television in an interview with Mike Wilbon and shrugged their shoulders and said, we don't know how much we're making. We don't know. Amari Stoudemire's got exactly $100 million. Ray Allen gets exactly $20 million. Every contract that has come out, you've got an exact figure on the money. And Wade and Bosh are announcing, Miami, here we come. Who knows what we'll make? We don't know.
And who knows? Hey, is LeBron coming too? Oh, we don't know. We'd love to have him, but we haven't talked to him. Oh, you haven't? This is such a charade, and I'm glad you called out Wade because I also think, I wrote about this in yesterday's column, but these guys have documentary crews filming around him, and the part that just was the red light, flashing red light to me that something wrong was happening was when he went back for the second meeting. And then the stories got floated out about, oh, he's going through a tough divorce. Don't think that this divorce isn't weighing on him. He wants to be closer to his kids and all that stuff. And it was just such garbage. Give me a break. Like he was going to walk away from Miami and all the extra money so he could, live closer to his kids. He could just fly his kids back and forth on a charter. He didn't care about that. Seemed a total reality TV play. And I don't know, when you think these guys were basically acting for at least the last week and possibly the last month, it's a little shady, right?
Well, it's a little shady. But I would say this to you. It wasn't, in one case, it wasn't good acting. Chris Bosh is saying, I don't know how this would work. It sounds like pie in the sky to me. And then a couple of days later, he's on national television saying, I don't know how much money I'm going to take. I'll take whatever they give me. It's fine. What? I could get $30 more million in a sign and trade with Toronto? I don't know how much I'm going to get here. Whatever.
Well, defend Miami sports for me because I was mean to Miami in yesterday's column about the impending LeBron.
You're always mean to Miami. You love this city, and you hate us as a sports town while living in L.A.
No, I love you as a football town. I think the Dolphins fans are great and great history, total respect, 100%. My issue, and we talked last night, and we could just basically repeat that conversation, but my issue is that they showed up 1 year for that, or actually for 2 years for those first two Shaq Wade teams, sellouts, all that stuff. As soon as things turned a little bit, the fans disappeared. And when I wrote about this in columns, the Miami fans were like, hey, dude, look, we have great fans, but we're not going to come out and support a team that sucks. It's like, well, then you're not great fans. How are you great fans if you only come out when the team is good? Explain this.
Well, no, they're not great fans of what you want them to be great fans of, which is the team. They're great fans of winning. Yeah. Huge, great, big fans of winning. That's what they are. I mean, that's what we are. Like, we're a bandwagon event city. We're a good football town. We'll support the University of Miami while it's winning 5 championships, but there'll be 22,000 in the stadium when they're playing an ACC game against the second place team. Like, that's not like Miami front runners, absolutely front runners. But these guys are going to be running out in front, and this city will get behind this thing. They're sold out already, Bill. Like, it's sold out. The season tickets gone. I heard a rumor. Jay-Z, 1% owner of the Nets, already bought courtside tickets and had trouble getting them.
Would you compare it to Los Angeles, maybe?
Well, that's it. I mean, it's the same. I think late arriving. A lot of things to do, kind of indifferent. I mean, I've been railing against our sports fan base for a long time because everyone says, hey, there's too much to do here. Like if we're all out windsurfing, or everybody's out windsurfing when the Marlins are playing. It's not a very good sports town, but it will do this correctly. That's the part I feel bad about. Cleveland's such a great sports town. I mean, those poor people have been so loyal to loser after loser, so loyal. And to have somebody from their city do this to them. I mean, I was arguing with Wilbon yesterday that I think it's worse than Art Modell, because Art Modell at least was an outsider who took the franchise. This guy took the franchise from inside the family. Which betrayal feels worse? A bigger betrayal from outside your family, or admittedly a smaller betrayal, because he's not literally taking the whole franchise with him, but a smaller betrayal from inside your family?
Well, and you could defend it. You can defend both of them in the following way. The people who defend Modell, and there's not many of them, will argue that he tried to keep the Browns in Cleveland and they wouldn't build him a stadium. But at least he made an effort. The LeBron people would defend him by saying, well, he gave them 7 years and they didn't build a good enough team around him, and they kept screwing up their free agency chances. They made bad trades. The biggest mistake they made was in February 2009, heading into the trade deadline. They had Wally Serbiak's expiring contract that they could have turned into Shaq or a couple other, whoever, and they were just like, nah, we're good. We like the team we have, and they ended up losing to Orlando, and that was probably the biggest mistake they made. But they never, ever did right by him personnel-wise. He never played with a really good player, and the one time they had their free agency chance, I think was 05 or 06, when they had the Larry Hughes, Danielle Marshall, Damon Jones splurge session. What a disaster. So I guess you could defend him in that way, but, man, I agree with you. And to do it on the national TV show, I thought was just brutal. I thought it was the meanest thing an athlete's ever done to a city. I remember in Boston when Clemens left, he had the press conference with Toronto, and he had the Toronto hat on. He was all happy, and he didn't really mention the Boston fans that much. And I hate him to this day. He's my least favorite athlete ever. This LeBron thing was 10 times worse than the Clemens press conference. Right?
Well, how much worse? I do wonder about this, because you'd agree with me, right? You'd agree with me that there's no good way to do it. Like they were gonna, if he leaves, if the end result is him leaving, Cleveland's going to be pissed. Period. Correct?
Yeah, but I think here's how I would have handled it if I were him. I would have made it very clear to Cleveland that I was leaving, because obviously he wanted to leave. So just do that. Give them a chance to be able to sign some free agents and talk sign-in trades and do stuff. Don't string them along and make it seem like you were going to stay and all this stuff when it's pretty clear that he and Bosch and Wade had decided they were all going to play together. You got to lay out some kernels and let people get their guard up, and then you definitely don't do it on a TV show. You do it, hey, look, tomorrow at noon, I'm releasing a statement saying where I'm playing. You do it by a statement. You do a TV show maybe 24 hours later, but you don't do it the way he did it. I think that it was a PR disaster. And it made me wonder, does he have a PR team?
Well, let's do it this way. I mean, he's got people surrounding, marketing people surrounding him, but let's do it this way. Let's say, hypothetically, he does this in the most humble and contrite way possible. That there are shows of both humility and contrition in this.
Yep.
things still aren't being burned in Cleveland?
I think there's a way that he could have left without the reaction that happened. I really do. And I think that was part of what drove some of the stuff that happened last night, I think, was that they just felt betrayed. And the fact that, and also like to hear him say that he woke up that morning and he changed his mind one last time and realized he figured out where he was going to play. So if he changed his mind, where did he change his mind from? Who was the team that was the front runner until he went to bed the night before he made the TV show? That question, unfortunately, wasn't asked. But
there were a lot of questions.
A lot of questions not asked. I would, if I was running that show, or if I was on the studio, I don't see how you don't ask him that question. I don't see how you don't ask him. You ripped your uniform off at the end of Game 6 of the Cleveland-Boston series as you were walking up the court. Did you know then that you were gone from Cleveland? That question has to be asked. The question of, when did you, Bosh, and Wade start talking about possibly playing together? Did it go back to China? Did you discuss it there? Is this something you always wanted to do? Is Chris Paul part of this? That question had to be asked. There's 12 questions that had to be asked. What would you have asked?
There was plenty of time to ask them, too, because they kept going back to LeBron like if he were Sal Palantonio. Or Ed Werder on Brett Favre's lawn. I would have asked questions about that spectacle, particularly, like, why are we doing this way? Are you aware of the amount of ego involved in what we're doing and how this is being received? What other ways did you consider doing this? Because there's going to be there's going to be a consensus negative reaction to what it is that we're in the middle of right now. I want to know. How injured he was at the end of last season. Where does he have to be?
Hold on, stop for a second. What happened to that elbow injury? That's a great question. I didn't even think of that. How's your elbow, LeBron? How's your elbow that we watched you adjust the elbow pad for the whole playoffs, and you might need Tommy John. Is Miami worried about the elbow? Did they have doctors check it out? But, put it this way, we spent an hour with the guy, and I had more answers afterwards. I had more questions afterwards than answers. Didn't you?
I still had a lot of questions. I memean, I don't know. It's hard to be direct in that spot, and there's so much fame. And but I mean, I guess the simple way to ask the question is, how could you do this, and how could you do this way?
Right.
Isn't that what you're wondering? Like, instead of just sort of leaving the platform up to him to dictate it wherever he was, and he looked scared, Bill. Like, I mean, I'm not a body language expert, and I hate getting inside someone's mind and pretending I know what's going on there based on body language, because we all have different sensibilities and we all react to things different ways. But don't you think that by consensus, America was watching that and saying, he doesn't look comfortable. He doesn't look happy, and he doesn't look comfortable.
I disagree. I think he was trying to rein in his happiness. I think he's extremely happy that he's moving to Miami and he's playing with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Pat Riley after Pat Riley has Eric Spoelstra go on a Fredo boat ride, which that's going to happen. But I think he was happy, and I think he was reining himself in, and I think this guy now gets to play in South Beach. And I thought that was interesting that that's how he announced it. I'm taking my talents to South Beach.
What a great sentence. Oh, my God, what a great sentence.
I had a reader say that should be the new euphemism for masturbation. Where were you? I was just taking my talents to South Beach because last night was all about masturbation. He didn't even say Miami. I thought that was the most telling part of the whole hour. I'm taking my talents to South Beach. I've been to the American Airlines Center. It's not in South Beach. It's in downtown Miami.
Well, I'm convinced that on one of these documentaries, we're going to go ahead and see exactly what happened, and we're going to learn later, after the fact, that meeting with Riley wasn't actually 3 hours. That recruiting meeting wasn't 3 hours, and it wasn't histrionics, and it wasn't Riley being master motivator, poet, philosopher. It was simply Riley walking into the room, leaning into LeBron and saying, "Big boy, South Beach is going to," and then walking out of the room.
But that after showing him his 7 rings. And, Riley's role hasn't really been mentioned here, but this is a guy who pulled one of the all-time backstabs that nobody remembers now when he left New York for Miami, correct? He went from the Lakers to the Knicks, which at the time Laker fans were enraged. They thought that he had totally sold them out. He jettisoned Stan Van Gundy. He just basically he did what he's going to do to Eric Spoelstra.
Actually, on that one, I got to correct you because I happen to know what happened in that situation because I'm friends with Stan Van Gundy, and that was really like there was stuff going on in his life. Like I know that's how it looked, but those weren't fake tears by Riley at that press conference. I know how that one looked and sounded and felt nationally, but the truth is that he didn't actually do that to Stan Van Gundy. Stan Van Gundy had stuff going on at home that needed his attention.
Listen, Le Batard, how dare you bring facts into this? Let me go on with my rant of how things look without actually knowing what the facts were. And now when Spoelstra also has trouble with his family and has to resign in mid-January, and Pat Riley heroically takes over. But I just think this guy is one of the most calculating guys we've had in pro sports. And I don't mean that as an insult. I think he's really smart. This is a guy that got Magic and Kareem to coexist for an entire decade. When Magic was a young guy who ran his previous coach out of town and was living the life in L.A., and, you know, think of all the – why didn't Magic suffer from some of the child actor stuff you talked about earlier? Riley must have helped him out somehow, right?
Those are two alpha dogs, aren't they, Kareem and Magic? Alpha dogs. Alpha dog theory being tested. Alpha dogs.
Right.
Are you pronouncing Spoelstra's name right? I love that.
I like calling him Spoelstra. I don't care. It fits into part of my gimmick. I like mispronouncing names. Here's the thing with Kareem and Magic, though, and this is what people forget. From 79 to 85, Kareem was the alpha dog, and Magic was the dutiful second banana. During the 85-86 season, when the Celtics won 67 games, won the title, Houston upset the Lakers in the playoffs, and the reason they did was because Magic hadn't taken the alpha dog range yet. Kareem was freaking old. He was 38 years old. He was getting killed by Hakeem in that series. And after that series, Magic realized, all right, I got to become the alpha dog, which he did. And for the next 6 years, he became the alpha dog. And Kareem was so old that he let it happen. If 30-year-old Kareem wouldn't let it happen, but 39-year-old Kareem was happy to have the help. And that's the difference between that situation and this. I still want to see who is going to defer to who. And I really think it might end up being LeBron. I think if we learned anything yesterday, it's that he doesn't have that Jordan gene. You know, we learned that in the 2010 playoffs, and we learned it last night. He's not wired like that. He's not a killer. And I said this in my column yesterday. Jordan would have wanted to beat Dwayne Wade. He would not have wanted to play with him. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, I don't like saying someone's not a killer. I mean, I could just flip that around and tell you he's an unselfish basketball player. I could frame it that way if I want. He doesn't mind. He sees that the best path is for them to be teammates. That they're legitimate friends, and that I've had this conversation over the last 6 months with various people because with my best friends, and I've been like, would you and I do this? Would you, if we had to share everything, but we could conquer the world, like we could conquer the thing that we love, would we prefer to share it, or would we rather go against each other? Would we rather defend each other and keep the other from getting it? If we're legitimate friends, and those guys are legitimate friends, Bill, like Dwayne Wade stayed at LeBron's house when he would play against the Cavs. You and I are friends. I've never stayed in your house. You've never been in my house. Like, those guys are legitimate friends. So which one would you do? I know there's ego and all sorts of stuff there, but now make it someone who's your really good friend and who's comparable to you, who's like whoever a media superstar is that.
Thank you.
That's it, and you can conquer like whatever it is, the internet, or you could conquer.
You can't compare what we do to what basketball is, Le Batard. And also, I'm not allowed in your house because you're single and there's supermodels going in and out of there every night. I'm not allowed to go in. My wife doesn't allow it. It's part of my prenuptial agreement.
Actually, it's more like the scene in Boogie Nights. I'm in a bathrobe and there's a Korean kid throwing firecrackers while he plays.
I don't think you could compare media with basketball, but I do think Hey, maybe it's a symptom of what sports is now, and that instead of wanting to beat everybody who's as good as you become friends with them when you're 17 or 18 or 20, and it's all one big buddy system. And maybe if Jordan had come of age in this era, he wouldn't have been the same killer that he was that we watched. But I just find it really hard to believe that 1990 Michael Jordan wouldn't have looked at Dwayne Wade and seen anything but a rival and somebody that he had to vanquish, because that's how he thought. And LeBron obviously isn't wired that way. Maybe he's wired as a supporting guy. Maybe that's what his destiny is.
As if it's a bad thing to be Scottie Pippen, top 50 basketball player of all time, who wouldn't have been a top 50 basketball player of all time if
Stop it. Stop it. Don't disparage Pippen on my podcast. That guy was great.
Let me do this
I'll
one.
defend Pippen.
You mentioned media comparisons to basketball. I found this one funny last night watching and feeling, because I definitely felt it. I was quite the gas bag on the national media tour. I said on Scott Van Pelt's show, I said, because I was hearing so many things in Miami from people I trusted, I said I would stake my credibility on LeBron James is coming to Miami. And I saw last night watching this, Stephen A. Smith and Chris Broussard and me, because I had done that to a lesser extent in a very, in a much smaller way, we were all terrified, Bill. Terrified. I'm not kidding you. When I talked to Stephen A. Smith, he doesn't want to go through this story ever again in his life, something like that. All of us were terrified. And what I find funny about that is, and the media says that in big moments, guys shrink. Like, my sphincter couldn't have gotten any tighter. I can't even imagine what it was like to be Broussard and Stephen A. Smith with, national embarrassment in the balance and this huge hit to your credibility. And these athletes, every night they're doing that. Every night they're risking embarrassment and shame with the last shot so that we can thunder forth and judge them and criticize them.
Do you like Dwayne Wade as a person?
I do like Dwayne Wade a lot, but he's a lot different. He's a lot different now than he was when he came into the league, which seems pretty inevitable.
A lot different in what way?
Oh, there was just huge access to him. He was just so kind. And what everyone would say to him, janitors, media types, everyone would say, please don't change. Please be this guy. I mean, we had him on our radio show. He would come on the radio every week during their championship season.
So what changed?
Everything around him changed. It's not like a fundamental difference in him or his character. It's just things got bigger. P. Diddy is making him a fashion model in Paris. Just this avalanche of opportunities and things presented themselves. And at one point in his life, he took out student loans at Marquette in order to pay for diapers. And then you go from that to, hey, doing a radio interview is pretty cool. And then the whole thing just explodes. And then what do you need to, change your own diapers for? What do you need to do a radio interview for? You get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm not saying, I'm not criticizing him, because it's really hard to remain exactly the same person. And it wouldn't require any growth to be exactly the same person, totally humble. But this decision and everything he's done around it is certainly in keeping with sort of an unselfishness and the kind of things. He comes out golden in this, Bill. That's the thing. LeBron in this situation had more value than anybody, and he sacrificed more. He lost more in this transaction than anybody. Wade comes out of this totally unscathed, totally unscathed. The king falls from the throne, and the prince gets to continue being the prince.
I would argue that he was the big winner of this whole thing, because he went from playing on one of the worst supporting cast teams I think that's ever had a 47-win season. That team was terrible. It was really just horrible to watch, and I felt bad for him the whole time. And now he has somehow talked his biggest rival into coming to his city and playing for his team and being his supporting cast member. And same for Bosh, who I still think is a little overrated, but still. And now Wade controls everything that happens. And I do think he's going to end up being the crunch time guy on this team to some degree. But regardless, if he plays with LeBron for the rest of his career, he'll always have one more ring than LeBron, right? and he's just vaulted himself to a level that I don't think he could have reached unless he went to the Knicks and turned basketball around there, or if he went to Chicago and just started winning titles and kicking everybody's butt.
Well, this is why I found whatever conversations. If I could have a 1-hour special on any of this, I'd want a 1-hour special. I think in this order. I'd want a 1-hour special in the real conversations between them, and I'd want a 1-hour special of Pat Riley, recruiting LeBron James. But beyond that, I would love to know if they've had conversations, if Wade and LeBron had this conversation.
Yeah.
Dwayne, I don't want to go down there because I'm giving up my hometown and I'm giving up everything. I want to do this. I want to play with you. Let's do this. We're buddies. We're friends. This is a great idea. But I don't want to go down there because I've got so much to lose and so much anger and I'm risking so much. You need to risk the same thing that I'm risking. You need to leave your comfort zone too, which is Miami or your hometown of Chicago. Let's go to New York. Let's go to New Jersey. Let's go to the Clippers. Let's both risk the same amount. You get your city angry. You get Miami to be angry too. Let's go do this together. I would be interested to see because LeBron risked more here by a lot. Dwayne's not risking anything. There's no risk in this for Dwayne. None.
Well, couldn't you say Dwayne is smarter? Because somehow he convinced LeBron to do what he did and come to be, his co-star, and he didn't lose anything, as you said. I mean, I feel like he was the Michael Corleone of this whole situation.
Or maybe they're just mid-20s guys who, know how sexy South Beach is and that they're going to run it. I mean, LeBron's already at the W Hotel down here, rented a bunch of bungalows. Dwayne Wade last night was at the big restaurant in town watching this, at Prime 112. He was getting, Chance and Let's Go Heat, and everyone was surrounding him, there. Maybe it could be as simple as that. It could be as simple. I mean, we overanalyze it and we've become obsessed, hyperventilated with it. It could be as simple as two friends saying, wouldn't it be cool if we just ran Miami with Pat Riley? Like if Pat Riley, and I'm sure Pat Riley was selling that, if we just ran Miami and an international city, ran the world, because I'm telling you, Bill, I don't need to tell you actually, per square foot, there is no place on this planet with more attractive women than this place. None.
Or a more fun place to just go out and do your thing and be left alone a little bit and have the celebrity and privacy and the spoils of your riches and all that stuff. I think Miami is number one. It's even better than Los Angeles in that respect. And I thought that was, as I kept looking at this and thinking, would LeBron really do this? I just think it's easy to be a multi-trillionaire and live in South Beach and just kill it every night and do your thing. And anybody who's been there, if you're looking at that versus staying in Cleveland or even going to Chicago, I do think you're right. And I look at the way I was at age 25 and some of the dumb things I did and what was important to me. And I think I'd make the same decision. Woohoo, South Beach. I'm here with two of my boys. Woohoo!
I mean, that's why Matt Damon lives here. Matt Damon lives here. This is going to sound bloated and name-dropping, but there's just a funny story. He wanted to talk, actually, when the Heat were going through their championship run. I ran into him someplace, and he wanted to run. He wanted to talk about it, and that's why he lives here. He lives in South Beach because he's like, there's one paparazzi. I have a relationship with this paparazzi. I'll just go and he'll see me and I'll be jogging and I'll wave and I'll come out of my car and he will have left, a car seat on top of my car so he can photograph me because I've got a baby coming or I've got a baby already. And so he can photograph me for the magazines, and I could live down here in peace, away from Los Angeles and away from some of the things in New York. I could just be left alone. There's no way to tell that story without sounding like a bloated name drop.
No, but listen, right? There's a reason that these free agents in the NBA over and over again land in Florida, California, Arizona. It happens again and again and again. And at some point, we have to take a step back of this and be like, would we do the same? If you had a choice between your company could transfer you to Cleveland or Detroit or Miami, and you were a single guy, what would you do? You would say, transfer me to Miami. That'll be awesome. Yeah. That's what you would do. That's what anyone would do. And that's why, I don't think we should be too surprised that LeBron did what he did. On the other hand, I think the way that he did it, I don't think he'll ever live down. And on that note, we should go because it's.
Oh, wait, I want to ask you something. One last question before we go here. Why do you think that disconnect exists between us never putting ourselves in the place of these athletes? Because I'm always saying to people, like, you always want Nick Saban or Bill Parcells running your team, but you wouldn't want to work for that guy. You don't want to work for that boss. So why do you think athletes want to or should? Why does that disconnect exist where we never say, well, I would have done the same thing. That's what I would have done that.
I try to look at that way as much as I can, and that's part of the reason that I was so mad at what LeBron did last night, because I did try to put myself in his shoes and try to figure out why he would do that, I just can't figure out what the upside was to whamming a pitchfork into Cleveland's back like that. But I totally understand the whole South Beach thing. And I think if you're a very rich athlete in your mid-20s who has a lot of money, that's one of the 3 cities in America that you'd want to be. So I get it. But I just wish he hadn't done it the way he did it. Let's plug your radio show quickly because it's one of the best radio shows in America. You have a podcast that people can listen to, correct?
790theticket.com. But what I want you to get me as well, we need Twitter followers. Give me some of your Twitter followers.
Well, I'll do it today when I post the link to the podcast. And then I'm going to come on your show today, and you guys can get mad at me about this whole me thinking Miami is not a true basketball city, all that stuff.
You think you want to take calls? Because some people down here are mad at you.
I don't want to take calls. What is this, Larry King?
No, I'm just asking you. That's why I'm asking the question.
Calls.
All right.
All right. I'll talk to you on your show. Thanks for the time. Good luck being the king of all basketball media.
See you later, buddy.